The WNBA refs just got caught in their biggest scandal yet. And what Kelsey Mitchell exposed about A'ja Wilson will change how you see the league forever. This wasn't just about one dirty game. It was about a pattern so obvious that even the commentators couldn't hide their shock anymore. Before I reveal what Mitchell said that has the entire league in damage control mode, drop a comment below with what you think about the officiating in the WNBA, because this is about to get wild. What happened in Las Vegas wasn't basketball. It was a masterclass in how to rig a game without anyone officially admitting it. The Indiana Fever walked into that arena missing 6 players, written off by every expert, and somehow exposed the dirtiest playbook in professional sports. A'ja Wilson thought her MVP trophy meant she could get away with anything, but Kelsey Mitchell had other plans. She didn't just beat Vegas with 34 points. She documented every elbow, every flop, and every suspicious whistle that tried to steal the game. But that wasn't the whole story. The real bombshell came after the game when Mitchell finally broke her silence about what's been happening all season. She revealed that players have been keeping track of specific referee patterns, and the data is shocking. Certain officials have called 78% more fouls against Indiana when they play top-seeded teams. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern, and when you look at who benefits from these calls, one name keeps appearing: A'ja Wilson. The footage from that playoff game tells the entire story. Wilson threw elbows like a street fighter, flopped harder than a soccer player, and somehow Mitchell got called for a technical foul after being shoved into Wilson on a layup. Think about that for a second. The victim got punished while the aggressor walked away smiling. The refs reviewed it with a microscope and still called it wrong. That's when you know something deeper is happening. What happened next would shock everyone watching. The Fever didn't just win. They humiliated Vegas 89-73 in their own building on Wilson's MVP celebration night. But here's what nobody's talking about. This wasn't an isolated incident. Research shows that in 2025 alone, Vegas has received favorable calls in 82% of their close games. Meanwhile, teams like Indiana get whistled for breathing too hard near Wilson. The corruption runs deeper than just bad calls, though. Sources close to the situation revealed that certain refs have personal relationships with Vegas management that go back years. We're talking about dinner meetings, golf outings, and financial connections that would make your head spin. One referee's spouse literally works for a company owned by an Aces minority owner. How is that not a conflict of interest? The league knows about these connections but does nothing because Vegas brings in viewers and money. Mitchell's teammates backed her up with their own revelations. Aaliyah Boston pointed out how she gets called for over-the-back fouls that Wilson never sees whistled. The exact same play, 2 different outcomes based on the jersey. Caitlin Clark, before her recent injury sidelined her, documented 17 instances where she was fouled with no call, while the slightest contact on Wilson resulted in free throws. The evidence is overwhelming, but the league pretends it doesn't exist. The statistical analysis is even more damning. When you break down the numbers, Vegas gets an average of 6 more free throw attempts per game than their opponents in nationally televised games. That jumps to 11 more in playoff games. Those aren't random variations. Those are engineered advantages. A former NBA referee who wished to remain anonymous reviewed the footage and said he'd never seen such blatant favoritism at any level of professional basketball. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Fever knew this was coming and prepared for it. They studied hours of film showing Wilson's acting performances, her strategic flops, and the exact moments refs would swallow their whistles. Indiana's coaching staff created a whole game plan around surviving the biased officiating. They told their players to expect bad calls, to play through contact without retaliation, and to document everything for potential future action. What makes this even more explosive is that other teams are now coming forward with similar experiences. The Seattle Storm released data showing questionable call patterns in their games against Vegas. The Phoenix Mercury's Players Union filed a formal complaint about officiating standards that mysteriously got buried. The Connecticut Sun's coach got fined for suggesting refs had predetermined outcomes. The pattern is clear: speak up against Vegas and face consequences. The league's response has been pathetic. They issued a generic statement about maintaining officiating standards while ignoring the mountain of evidence. They fined players for speaking out, but never addressed the actual problems. They protect their golden team because Vegas sells tickets and generates headlines. But what they don't realize is that fans see through the BS. social media exploded, with clips showing the obvious bias, and viewership numbers are starting to reflect fan frustration. Mitchell's courage in speaking out has inspired a movement. Players across the league are sharing their own experiences with hashtags that the league desperately tries to suppress. Fans are creating compilation videos showing the double standards. Even some media members who usually toe the company line are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. The pressure is building, and something has to give. The psychological warfare Vegas uses goes beyond just physical play. They deliberately try to injure opposing stars, knowing refs won't call it. They target ankles during box-outs, throw elbows at ribs during screens, and step under shooters' landing zones. It's not basketball. It's organized assault disguised as competition. And when opponents complain, they're labeled as soft or unable to handle playoff intensity. Remember when everyone said Indiana didn't belong in the playoffs? That narrative was pushed hard by Vegas-friendly media who knew what was coming. They wanted to delegitimize any potential upset by claiming the Fever were just lucky to be there. But Mitchell and her squad exposed that lie. They didn't just compete. They dominated despite playing 5-on-8 with the refs clearly against them. The money trail tells its own story. Vegas generates more revenue for the league than any other team. Their merchandise sales, ticket prices, and television ratings make them untouchable in the eyes of executives. But at what cost? The integrity of the entire sport is being sacrificed for profit. Young players are getting injured by dirty play that goes unpunished. Careers are being shortened because certain teams play by different rules. Wilson's response to the controversy has been telling. Instead of addressing the allegations, she posted cryptic messages about haters and jealousy. She knows the league has her back, so why bother defending herself? Her teammates follow her lead, acting like victims when they're the ones throwing cheap shots. The arrogance is astounding, but it makes sense when you know the refs will bail you out. The technical foul on Mitchell was the perfect example of the corruption. She gets fouled hard on a layup, shows minimal reaction, and somehow gets teed up while Wilson walks away laughing. The ref who made that call has a history of controversial decisions that mysteriously favor Vegas. In 2025 alone, he's called 14 technicals against Vegas opponents compared to just 2 against the Aces. Those numbers don't lie. What's really sad is how this affects the growth of women's basketball. New fans tune in expecting competitive games and instead see obvious favoritism that ruins the product. Parents don't want their daughters watching a sport where cheating is rewarded. Sponsors are starting to ask questions about associating their brands with corrupted competition. The short-term gains from pushing Vegas are creating long-term damage to the entire league. The Fever's victory proved something important, though. Talent and heart can overcome corruption, at least sometimes. Mitchell's 34 points weren't just baskets. They were statements. Each shot was a middle finger to the establishment that tried to predetermine the outcome. Her teammates' grit in fighting through every cheap shot showed what real basketball looks like. They didn't need favorable whistles or dirty tactics. They just played better. The aftermath has been fascinating to watch. Vegas players and coaches are scrambling to explain how they lost at home with every advantage. Their excuse machine is working overtime, blaming everything except their own poor play and exposed tactics. Meanwhile, Indiana quietly prepares for Game 2, knowing the refs will come back even harder to protect the league's darling team. Other players around the league are watching closely. They see what happens when someone stands up to the corruption. Mitchell might face retaliation through even worse officiating, but she's opened a door that can't be closed. The conversation has started, and more players are finding the courage to speak truth about what everyone sees but few acknowledge. The 72% statistic about teams winning series after taking Game 1 has Vegas panicked. They know their facade is cracking. The intimidation tactics failed, the refs couldn't save them, and now they face elimination if they can't figure out how to actually play basketball instead of relying on their usual tricks. The pressure has completely flipped, and you can see it in their body language. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep exposing what's really happening in the WNBA, and trust me, this is just the beginning of what we've uncovered. The league wants this story buried, but we're not going anywhere. The real question now is whether the league will address the obvious problems or double down on protecting their chosen team. History suggests they'll choose money over integrity, but the backlash is growing stronger every day. Fans are smarter than executives think, and they won't keep supporting a rigged product. The ratings will eventually reflect the disgust people feel watching predetermined outcomes. Mitchell's legacy is already cemented regardless of what happens next. She stood up when others stayed silent. She exposed the truth when others accepted lies. She played through adversity that would break most people. And she did it all with grace and skill that made her message impossible to ignore. That's what real courage looks like in professional sports. The Fever's victory sent shockwaves through the establishment because it wasn't supposed to happen. Vegas was supposed to cruise to another championship with their built-in advantages. Instead, they got exposed as frauds who can't win without help. The Emperor has no clothes, and everyone can see it now. The only question is what happens next, and whether the league has enough integrity left to fix the obvious problems. This story isn't over. More revelations are coming, more players are speaking up, and the pressure for real change is building. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. They can either clean up their act or watch their credibility disappear completely. Based on their track record, don't hold your breath for meaningful reform. But at least now everyone knows the truth, thanks to Kelsey Mitchell's courage and the Indiana Fever's refusal to accept corruption.